Noth Clipper, hi friends, Darth Momo here, and today we're going to talk about the Young Jedi Adventures, and then I'll finally be done with my catch-up. This should be everything to date for Star Wars. So today we're going to talk about Young Jedi Adventures, Season 1, Episodes 1 through 19, because who knows if this is the end of Season 1 or not. That's one thing I find frustrating about the show is they've been doing it in like small drops of a few episodes, and there's supposed to be another batch in the spring, so I don't know if that's because we're at 19 installments right now, which is pretty full season, especially when you compare to the Bad Batch and the other Disney Plus shows. It's longer, and it's about right there with like Clone Wars seasons. But I don't know if that next drop of, let's say, 6 episodes, if that's supposed to be a season 2, if that's supposed to pad on the season 1. I don't know. It's frustrating because they don't just be consistent about it. But anyway, so Young Jedi Adventures. Yeah, I watched it. I didn't really want to, but it's canon. So I forced myself to sit through it as I did my workouts every day. And here's what I have to say. It wasn't the worst thing ever. That doesn't mean I liked it, because there was some cool moments and some cool like parts, but there was maybe one, because one installment is 2 11-minute episodes. Don't think like Clone Wars, think like SpongeBob. So there was one 11-minute episode that I kind of liked the premise of. That was basically it. I do think that because there's been 3 drops so far, and I do think the last drop was the better of the 3. But I mean, you got to kind of look at it in different ways, right? Like, I'm not the target audience for this, obviously. Like, Lucasfilm has been up front. It's a show for preschoolers, and as a preschool show, yeah, it checked all the boxes. It's pretty solid. It literally just felt like I was watching a preschool toned Star Wars show. That's literally what it felt like. You know, it's got the right tone. It's got the right, like, checkmark lessons that you teach. It's got the right pacing. Yeah, it works as a preschool show. If we're looking at that regard, I'd say 9 out of 10. But as for what I personally thought of it and my personal enjoyment, maybe a 4 out of 10? 5 out of 10? I don't know. I mean, like I said, you know, there's things to like about it. There's things to not like. I'll say anytime Yoda was in it and actually played a focus, whether that was a scene or for an whole episode, I enjoyed it. It felt like Yoda, and that was one of the better aspects of the show. The last batch had a couple connections to the High Republic, which I wasn't a big fan of the High Republic. I didn't hate it or thought it like ruined Star Wars or anything. But I tried reading Light of the Jedi. I did read Light of the Jedi, and I just couldn't get into it. Books are harder for me to get into. I've got to be kind of like, I've got to have some sort, because I'm a visual guy, I got to have some sort of like connection to it. So for example, like, let's say we're going to talk about a new story, you know, for me, it's got to be, when it comes to a book, a Star Wars book, let's say, it's got to be familiar character, new era situation, etc., or familiar era situation, but new characters. It's hard to get into, you know, for me, just especially with a book, because I have such a hard time visualizing, it's hard to just jump into that. And comics are just too expensive. So after Light of the Jedi, I stepped out, but like, I know some of the basics of the characters, so it was cool to see a couple of those High Republic characters pop in at the end. It was cool to see Starlight Beacon. The Life Day one, that was fun, just as anytime we reference the holiday special, I'm down for it. And the whole focus was the orbs on the final scene in the holiday special where Carrie Fisher sings, and they're all all the Wookiees are in the red robes. They reference that, and that's kind of the plot of the episode. And yeah, that was kind of funny in like the fourth wall way, not like, you know, in universe funny. I mean, I like that the show has like reoccurring characters. You know, it's not just the you know, typical like SpongeBob where everything's new. There's recurring characters that pop up. There's familiar story beats. There's familiar villains and faces and allies and side characters. I think it works being focused, like if they're going to do a preschool show, I think this is the perfect era because as far as the High Republic era goes, this is right before the conflict starts. So you can't have a preschool show in like the time of the Empire or the time of the Clone Wars. That wouldn't work. You'd either spoil the era with such a child-friendly tone, or you would make something too mature and adult for 3 and 4-year-olds to take in. So I think that the premise kind of works, and the fact that it's like, this is part of the Jedi Order. Like they train kids. Kids are kind of like Padawans. It works to have like a 10-year-old kid running around with a lightsaber because that's basically been how the Jedi Order works since at least the prequels, if not earlier. So to me, like, the show kind of fits in canon. It's not overtly kiddie unless it's focusing on the kids. Like, the adults aren't. It's not like Resistance. The main character, Resistance, was a 20-year-old man and he was a bumbling buffoon. So that was harder to accept because it's a grown man. Whereas this, like, the adults in the show actually act like adults, and it's the kids that are kind of, kids. So, I want to emphasize with this show, like, I'm not trying to say that it's the best show ever, because it was not my favorite show. I was able to sit through it and not hate myself and dread it, right? Like, I was able to sit through it and, get through it and be like, okay, yep. But I'm never going to watch the show again unless, like, I've got a 4-year-old at home and 10 years down the road and, we're getting him into Star Wars. Then, yeah, maybe I'd watch this with him or her, but that'd be it. Otherwise, I never plan to really revisit this show, which is fine. It's not for me. I'm not big on the idea of a preschool show for Star Wars. I don't like that. I wouldn't, let's let this be a one-time experiment. It's frustrating too because the High Republic has potential to be an interesting new era, and obviously they're going to explore that with the Acolyte show. It's live action. It's in that same era, but it's like this is really going to be our first on-screen look at the High Republic, a show for 4-year-olds. So, like I said, for me personally, I give it maybe a 4 out of 10. As for if I would recommend it, I think this is the first time I'm actually going to have a split opinion and one that isn't kind of along the lines of what I normally say. So, if you're a Star Wars junkie like I am, if you enjoy, if you're a canon connoisseur or you're a completionist and you want to see the whole story, every single thing, or you want all the canon, all the lore, then yeah, I recommend giving it a one-shot run-through. Wouldn't take that long to sit through and watch, especially like me, I had started working out. I'd been intending to watch the show and then I started working out. So to me, it was a perfect thing to kind of just put on my phone while I run on the treadmill. And in that kind of a situation, I recommend watching it then. But for someone who could care less about having the complete Star Wars story, doesn't want every little nook and cranny of the canon, go ahead and give it a pass. You're not going to miss much. I would say, as of right now, you're not missing anything because it's the only High Republic on-screen story, and I highly doubt the Acolyte will connect to this. It's one thing for the live-action shows to connect to, the animated shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels, which were for, a more grown-up audience, that were for more an all-ages setting, but to connect to a show that is straightly targeted towards preschoolers and nothing else, yeah, I doubt it. So, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys for joining in. Thank you for waiting for my catch-ups. We should be good now, and we'll be around for whenever the next Star Wars show rolls around, whether that's Skeleton Crew, Ahsoka Season 2, Mando Season 4, Andor Season 2, The Acolyte. I don't know what's coming next at this point. Or the Young Jedi Adventures next drop. I'll review those too. But I don't know what's next. As of right now, I guess March of 24, I think. It could be April. March or spring of 24, I think the next batch of Young Jedi Adventures is supposed to drop. So if we don't get anything else by then here we go. I'll see you then. Thank you guys for joining in. Darth Momo out. May the Force be with you. Always. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, comment down below and hit that like button. Oh, and check out some of my other videos. I'm sure you'll find them delight.